In 2002, I was going to the National Society of Black Physicists meeting, and you know, you get on your plane, you have all these people going to this conference. It was in Huntsville, Alabama, and there was this white guy hanging around everywhere. And so finally we get on the shuttle from the airport going to the hotel. I'm like, dude, who are you, right? He's like, oh, my name is Kevin Hand, and I'm a graduate student at Stanford. And I was like, no way, I went to Stanford, right? And we chop it up. And, you know, we go to our hotel rooms, and, you know, I don't see the guy. And then the next day, I'm going around looking for a talk to go into, and I see outside of the door, a session on physics in Africa. So I walk in the room, and who's giving the talk but this guy, Kevin Hand, right? And he's talking about how him and this other guy, Will Marshall, they go to Eastern and Southern Africa, and they go to these schools, and they just share science with kids, right? And I talked to him afterwards. I'm like, Kevin, this sounds amazing, man. Can I get involved? And Kevin goes, Hakeem, the question isn't can you get involved, you must be involved, right? So he tells me that he goes in the summers, and this particular summer, I'm not available, right? Summer of 2002. I'm not available, and so I call him that September, and I say, hey, Kevin, remember me? You met me? He's like, yeah. And guess what, man? There's a total solar eclipse, and we're taking a team of people to South Africa and Botswana, and we'd like for you to go. And I'm like, dude, what? That must cost like $80,000. How do you get there? He's like, oh, don't worry. We're going to pay for you to go. Count me in, right? So I go, and it's really crazy because they're like, yeah, Hakeem, land in Johannesburg and rent a car and drive to Swaziland. Oh, it's about a couple hours, right? It wasn't, right? And I'm driving, it's late night, and you know, I see a sign on the highway. It's like a yield sign. It's a triangle with an exclamation point. And underneath it says, do not stop, hijacking hotspot. Like, oh my God, right? So the roads get narrower and narrower, you know, and there's nobody on the road but me. And then suddenly I get to a big gate, right? And that was the border. And I'm like, you know, I have a cell phone, so I called them. They're in Botswana. I'm like, yeah, you know, they're like, oh, it's a hotel nearby. Go find a hotel. There was no hotel, right? But I did find this one place. I don't know what to call it. And you know how it is if you're traveling somewhere, you stop at a neighborhood store and there's like bars at McDonald's, you know, something's wrong, right? So I get to this place and there's like bars, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna die, right? But anyway, I make it into Swaziland, and I start visiting schools, and I had the general, you know, American attitude about Africa, right? And so I get in these schools, and I go to like, you know, these orphanages where kids are walking around with missing limbs. There's a lot of AIDS, orphans, and I start talking to them, and I discover that they are as intelligent as American students, right? And they have an amazing attitude for learning, right? And so we then go, you know, to South Africa, and we're in Soweto. And everywhere I go, these kids are blowing me away with their scientific knowledge and their attitude. And not only that, you know, they're really excited to learn. And I discover, like, I never set out to be like an inspirational figure or a speaker or anything like that. But I find that you know, I'm just a ham, right? And I like playing with kids, right? And I just find these kids are just, you know, they're just latching on to me. And I'm getting this real sense of satisfaction out of it. And so this becomes a life's passion of mine. So every year now I find myself traveling to these African nations. So I spend, you know, the next year I go to Zambia and Tanzania, and I'm learning the whole time. Like, I've never been in a country as poor as Zambia, right? Like, you couldn't find a fat person in Zambia. You know, I'm sleeping on the ground, and I'm eating, you know, drinking water out of springs. I'm getting horribly sick. And so ultimately what ends up happening is by 2011, the Western world starts paying attention to Africa around 2007. And now I'm working with African scientists. And I'll just tell you a couple more stories. One, the government of South Africa tells their astronomers, they have a wonderful history in astronomy accomplishment in South Africa. But most of their astronomers have been English. And so they say, listen, you start making South African astronomers, or we're going to start hitting you in the pocketbook, right? So their biggest pool of South Africans are the black South Africans. But what would happen is these students would go to these historically black colleges like we have in Mississippi, go to the University of Cape Town, which is one of the best universities in the world, and quickly fail out, right? And so my colleague, Charles Magruder, said, listen, we can prepare these students because what they need is not academic training, right? You have to attack things like identity. I was more comfortable, carrying a gun than hanging out in the physics department at Stanford University, right? Because I had this, I felt like the world told me, here's what you are. You're a black guy, you're supposed to be good at basketball, you're intimidating, you're this, you're that, and I lived that out, right? And the other thing is you have this notion, like I remember talking to my mom when I was in Silicon Valley, and she said something about Asians being smarter. Now, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area where there's a lot of Asians. So, of course, I knew a lot of dumbass Asians, right? So, I'm like, really? Oh, yeah, that stereotype does exist, right? But people internalize these things, And so, so what happened is that I would go there and teach students, physics to prepare them. And, they were talking about what their exams are. And I'm like, I don't care what they're going to be tested in. I'm going to teach them one or two courses. You decide. I'm either going to teach them cosmology or quantum field theory. You choose, right? And they're like, why those? And I was like, the reason why is I need to attack identity. I can reach people. I can teach them. They're going to understand. And when they realize they can understand what's considered to be the highest height of, you notice I didn't say general relativity. I can't teach that. But but you need a little bit for cosmology, right? But if I teach them that, they're going to get it, and then they're going to have the confidence. They're going to know that it's theirs, right? And here's what happened. We have a plot, right? Because we had a report with this grant. The percentage of black students in their graduate program, it did that, right? And not only did the students I teach all pass their honors exam, the equivalent of our qualifying exam, they all pass in the top 20%. Right? So now, they have the SKA, the Square Kilometer Array, and South African astronomy is all over TV, right? CNN International, and I see my very students on TV right now, right? And so, so now, it's just been a passion of mine to go around and go into these communities and, and work with these students. And because I don't know why it is, but the number of people that say to me, I thought I was dumb until I met you. Right? And then they believe, right?